3 children and 3 women are missing. This after security forces in Manipur say that they have killed 10 suspected Kuki insurgents. Manipur is back in the headlines for all the wrong reasons. It has been more than a year since violence and strife erupted in the state, dividing the people and creating and drawing an invisible line across the heart of the state. What is happening in Manipur? It is a terribly distressing situation. Reports suggest that among the 3 children missing, the youngest is only 2 years old. What is going on, and when will enough be enough? Let me welcome our guests on the program today. It's a very grim day. For Manipur, it's been more than a grim year. Dr. Arambam Noni, who's of course an academic, is with us. Welcome to the program. I'm also joined by Paul. He's a student activist. Welcome, Paul, to the program. And we're also joined by Major Ali Shah, who's of course a military veteran who has spent a lot of his 40 years in the Northeast in Manipur. Welcome everybody to the program. Dr. Noni, I want to start with you. We do know that 3 children and 3 women are missing. The missing members of the community are from the Meitei community. The Manipur police says that this has happened after the police and security forces clashed and killed 10 alleged Kuki insurgents. The Kuki community is disputing this account of things, but what is really worrying me at this point is the thought of 3 children missing. My heart is really breaking at the thought of this. Can you tell us what is the latest? Do we have any information on the safety of these children and of the 3 women who are also missing?
Thank you, Barkha, for having me on your show, and you have been doing a fantastic work by often talking about the Manipur problem. And I think my intervention here would be some sort of a ground zero report, because it's like very important for us to talk about the safety and release of these women and children, because it is an international standard, or it is an international convention that even in the war times you are supposed to respect the injured women and children. Even the adversaries have to be treated with dignity. So I think Manipur is on the boil again. Whenever there is any semblance of peace, you can see repeat of the violence. So this is really unfortunate, and we have been living with this kind of situation for the last 18 months or so. Moreover, as we talk to you tonight here today, there are reports of firing happening, particularly on the valley areas facing the foothills. So there is a very tense situation in the state of Manipur. And you rightly said there's an invisible line being drawn. There is an apparent trauma which is being gone through by the people for so many months. So this is really a serious matter, and I appeal to all the right-thinking people, the leaders, and people who stand for human rights and dignity of citizens, that we should release, because that's the COVID. A conflict that definitely began as a civil conflict seems to be now transforming into a different kind of conflict where heavily armed people are crossing borders. And if you look at the report of police, it is very clear that they are saying that these militants actually came all the way from Surathanpur and Mojo district. And after the violence, it was found that on the spot, 80 rifles were 4 SLRs and 2 Insar rifles and 1 RPG. Many more ammunition were found. So I want to argue that these violence is getting transformed into some kind of very deliberate design to sustain violence in the state. So this is really a matter of concern.
Yes. Can I ask you? Yes, of course, you've spoken about the kind of ammunition and weaponry that has been recovered. And on my reporting trip to Manipur, one of the things that really worried me was weapons in the hands of civilians, not even insurgent groups. But do we have any news on the children, on the 3 missing children and the 3 missing women, sir?
I think that's a very, very critical question. There is no evidence. There is no evidence reliable proof, and unfortunately, we don't see elders of the community. I cannot see the church leaders coming forward with a request for a stable these children to women. I think it should have come by now. Forget about the conflict. It is a human issue. It is about safety of our children, irrespective of the community that we belong to. I think all the right people, as I said in the beginning, they must come forward. And to your question, there is no reliable, there is no credible information on the safety of the children, and this must have come really clear by now. But I've heard that the police and the civil security forces are trying their best to locate these missing people. Thank you.
Thank you for that, Dr. Noni. Before I come to Paul, I would once again like to remind our audience that among the missing is a 2-year-old baby. That is the reports.
Barkha, one clarity is that the youngest one is 8 to 10 months old.
8 to 10 months. I had heard 2 years. So you're saying the youngest is 8 to 10 months.
Yeah.
Okay, I stand corrected. That is even more distressing to think of this little infant, 8 to 10 months old, who is the youngest missing victim of the latest eruption of violence in Manipur. Paul, I want to bring you in. I do know that, of course, the Kuki community has contested the account of the Manipur police, and I'll come to that in a moment. But let's first talk about these children. I can't see Paul. Is Paul there? Or did we just lose Paul? Okay, maybe Paul will reconnect. Let me bring in Major Ali as we think about the fact that there is this 8-month-old or 10-month-old infant child who has gone missing, and we all pray that these missing people are brought home to safety. Major Shah, Dr. Noni talks about the changing nature of the Manipur conflict. When you think of women and children going missing, infants among them, what do you say at this turn of events?
Right, Barkha, it's indeed very disturbing, distressing, And when we mentioned just now, Professor Noni rightly said that 8-month-old baby, it was a heart goes out. Can you even imagine? Can our viewers even imagine an 8-month-old baby? So how gruesome the poison from both sides would be, how much hatred from both sides it would be, where you don't even have the heart for an 8-month-old baby, irrespective of the community, whether Meitei, because both I know, both the communities I know very well. I have friends, they are very, very good communities. They are very, very peace-loving communities. And the people watching us do not judge that people in Manipur are violent people. They are not violent. It's just the circumstances like that. They are fighting. It's very sad. Now, the people who have gone missing are, they were 13 Meitei members, a group of 13 Meitei people who were displaced in the month of June, in fact. And later on, and they were camping in a relief camp in the vicinity of CRPF camp at Jacaranda and Borobeka police stations. That's where the encounter took place, which you mentioned about 10 suspected militants were killed apparently. So there's a lot of controversy about that as well. In fact, now among them 8-month-old baby. So you can imagine the hatred that has gone through Barkha. Now, have we done enough? Professor Noni complimented you in the beginning that Barkha, thank you very much. You have done a great job with regard to covering Manipur is concerned. But there are very, very few journalists, unfortunately, who are actually taking keen interest in Manipur. Why? Because they think, oh, Manipur doesn't, it will not get those eyeballs. You didn't care for those eyeballs. You did your job as a journalist. And similarly, I think it is a responsibility of every single Indian to actually take part in this, to actually bring peace in Manipur in their own little way. Now, there's a body called Jiri Apunba Loop, which is a civil society group of Meitei in Jiribam. They had identified the 2 people whose bodies were charred to death, in fact, who were burned to death, were Laishram Barel Singh of 63 years old and Maibam Kechu Singh he was 71 years old. So senior citizens' bodies are being charred to death, are being burnt. So you can well imagine how bad the situation in Manipur is.
Now, Major Ali, I completely agree with you that it is shocking that Manipur is not the top headline everywhere. But since we lost the connection to Paul, I want to just read out what his community is saying, and maybe you and Dr. Noni can respond. Now, they're, of course, questioning the police account that the 10 killed were insurgents. For example, you have groups like the Mojo National Front, who in a press release have called these 10 Hamar volunteers, that is their tribe, as heroes, and said that they were only guarding their village when when the CRPF came for them, they've said in a statement, we denounce the CRPF's action and their discriminatory behavior against Mizo tribes. This is the statement from the Mizo National Front, who is calling these men heroes. The Manipur police is calling them militants, insurgents. Now, I'll start with you. Part of the problem is that when you try and explain Manipur to a general audience, the polarized narratives are so contested, So on the one hand, you have the Kuki groups calling these men heroes. On the other hand, you have the police basically calling them terrorists or militants. So how do we make sense of this? Yeah, Dr. Noni, please go ahead.
Yeah. I think it is very unbecoming on the part of the Mizo National Front. They are to interfere in the affairs of the state of Manipur. If it was released by some organization that is based in Manipur, that would have been even better. But these do not happen to happen. But you're quoting an organization that doesn't work in the state of Manipur. So forget about that. But you look at the sin of the violence. You look at the sin of the violence because this was actually a police station where the Manipur police and the CRPF personnel were holding up, and they were doing that duty. And moreover, they were giving shelter to some of the displaced persons. And these police stations were attacked. If you look at the sequence of the event, these militants actually had come crossing the river nearby and almost orchestrating an attack on the villagers. Perhaps you could read out from the event that the abduction perhaps happened slightly before the incident happened, because in the midst of the firing, probably the house got burned, and even the militants perhaps got injured and killed. But in the process, imagine the situation how these 6 people were effectively and very smartly being taken away as a hostage. So you could see the kind of design which is being implemented. I think this is unbecoming on the part of the so-called volunteers or militants, because we are basically to look at the nature and the sequence of the scene of violence. But if you look at this, how come these people come to the police station? How come they were firing on the police station? How come their bodies were found in the vicinity of the police station? That's something very, very serious matter to talk about. But I just want to tell you one more couple of things. As you rightly said, why some groups are trying to stop people from coming together and talking for it. If you look at the attempts made by the government of Manipur or the central government, all of you could hear that these 2 groups are actually stopping the MLAs and warning them not to talk to them without their permission. Now the question that emerges is that what will the role of elected people if they cannot raise their voice of their own, and if they have to follow the dictate of the armed groups all the time? You could imagine a situation of narrative that will come up. So what I feel is that Meitei Valley, Meitei the uplanders, you need to give freedom to people to talk about their aspirations and desire to come back to normalcy. I think there are forces who are trying to keep the phone boiling, and this polarization is never going to be good for the community. So therefore, we need to stop ethnicizing people. We need to stop weaponizing people, weaponizing identity politics. Thank you.
Yes, I completely agree with you that there has to be an effort at an intra-Manipur dialogue. That is the need of the hour. And who are these forces that are trying to, keep the pot boiling? Major Shah, you're somebody who has been in the military. Now you have this situation where the Kuki groups contest the CRPF's account. The Manipur police has one version. The Kuki groups have another version. And one of the most dangerous things that has happened in Manipur is also how the security agencies, whether it was the Assam Rifles, the Manipur police, now the CRPF, they have now all been pulled into this breakdown, as it were, between the Kuki and the Meitei people, often accused of bias, discrimination by one or the other side. How does a uniformed security personnel navigate his or her way through this?
Barkha, firstly, it's very, very difficult. The armed forces, when I say the armed force, I mean the security for I include the BSF, the CRPF, the Assam Rifles, the army, the police, the entire security uniform force. I think everyone is risking their life and they are doing a commendable job. And see, especially I can vouch for army and Assam Rifles because I have served with them personally. These 2 forces, I can bet on with my eyes closed. I, with all respect to other forces as well, but I haven't served there, so I will talk for the army and the Assam Rifles right now. See, what these people do is it's very difficult to distinguish between a militant and underground with a weapon and a village volunteer and someone, because a militant without a weapon would be a civilian. Now, when someone comes with a weapon, how do we distinguish whether he's a militant or he's a village volunteer or he's picked up a weapon to protect himself? I think the ideal would be if a situation can be developed where the armed forces are adequate to protect the local villagers. But unfortunately, what's happened in Manipur? The Kukis have lost faith in the state government over there. The Meitei, a lot of Meitei had lost faith in the Assam Rifles over there, where Assam Rifles was doing a very, very impartial job. They were led by Indian Army officers, and Indian Army officers are very, very impartial. So when it is, so there was a miscommunication, a gap of trust, which was going on. So now it's very difficult for an armed forces personnel to operate over there without, it's controversial, the Armed Forces Special Power Act, AFSPA, because without Armed Forces Special Power Act, it's very difficult. Now, yes, I totally agree to the fact that Armed Forces Special Power Act, it has been controversial. I will not deny that. It can be tweaked, it can be modified, it can be amended, but it can't be done away with completely. Because if it's done away with, then we find things going out of control. We find things would not be able to come, we will not be able to douse the fire at all. So it's very important for the military to get support. And military cannot function without the local support. When we have local support only, then military can function. Without, they're not out of nowhere. And every bullet that is fired, Barkha, every bullet that is fired, accountable for. Every khali khoka, that's the empty cartridge of a shell, is accounted for in the military. So it is, people think that, oh, just because the armed forces have got guns, they'll go on firing in midair. No, it doesn't happen that way. It's all accountable for, and there's an inquiry after every firing episode. So the very fact is, in Manipur, the only way forward right now would be dialogue. The Home Ministry had taken an initiative about 2 weeks back. There was a dialogue in Delhi between the Meitei and the Kukis. I would strongly urge, I would recommend ex-army officers, ex-journalists like you who are familiar with Manipur, who have been on ground, former chief secretaries of Manipur, former chairman ceasefire monitoring group, former GOCs who are experienced, who understand Manipur, who are neither Meiteis nor Kukis. They should play the role of interlocutor formally, officially, because they have no constitutional powers. There are a lot of rumor mongering. Yesterday, I heard that there was a statement that 10 Kuki MLAs who said, no, we had not met the Chief Minister, Mr. N. Brain Singh, as was reported and it was spoken about in the Supreme Court. That was a blatant lie. We had not spoken. Similarly, I have heard rumor that, oh, apparently it's laughable that I was called to consult on Manipur. No, nothing like that. Yes, I will not deny the fact. Informally, in a friendly way, I have been speaking, I have been meeting people from my way to get peace, to get both the communities together. But I think it should be official. It should come from the government. This initiative of forming a team of interlocutors. They had formed a team of 51 members of the peace committee, which was rejected by the peace committee members itself. Why? Because those members said, I wasn't consulted. How could you have given, you didn't take my consent? How can you put my name in a peace committee? And what would it end? What would be the end result? So I think it's time for action. It's time, it's about time, because as we've been talking about it, Barkha, we've been speaking about it from the very, very beginning, that a stitch in time saves 9. And we have gone way beyond time. We have really, it's ridiculous. It pains me no end when I see an 8-month-old baby being abducted.
Yeah.
No,
I can see. Yeah, yes. I can see Mr. Haokip joining us. Just as a shot stabilizes, I'll just get Dr. Noni to respond to this. Dr. Noni, do go ahead, and then we'll get Mr. Haokip's response.
I think we need to do a couple of corrections.
The sound is very low. My volume is on full.
Yeah. If I can speak.
Yes, Dr. Noni.
couple of things need to be corrected. I think it's not about identifying who's a militant and who's a volunteer. The whole idea is to restore normalcy and rule of law in the state of mind. That's the question, I guess. So even if you are a village volunteer, you are not supposed to have arms and it applies to both sides. So these narrative has to come out now, and I think no court in the state of Manipur should be allowed to actually play with this violent situation. If you look at Diri as a state, which is a multi-ethnic state, multi-ethnic district, it's a very important and significant space where many communities live there. So one very important step that happened in Diribam was that most of the communities, including Mars, Meitei, Mitos, Meiteis, and the state and selves, all had come together to constitute a peace commission. But this was again, disturbed by certain vested interests. So that was basically a turning point, basically. But there was a sign of peace in the region. Now you can see Diribam being a historically very important base for space for Manipur, which goes back to 1833 AD when agreement was signed on Diri Treaty. So you can see this is a very important space in terms of economy. It's a gateway for Manipur to Assam and other places of the country. So I think these increasing violence, particularly in Diribam, gives a kind of impression that some people want to destabilize the region. And if you have looked at today's press release issued by one Rongmei student or one Rongmei group, they have actually boycotted Kukis from entering their areas, particularly Noni district, because they were allegedly found to be burning a couple of trucks which were carrying onions to the valley. So you can see, in the highways also, you can see a lot of violence, and you can't get potatoes here, you can't get onions here. The price rise is so much, inflation is so high. It's just because there are people who are wreaking havoc on the highways of the state. These are serious matters.
Yes, actually, it's staggering that it's been more than a year and Manipur remains in this situation of internal strife. Seilen Haokip of the Kuki National Organization is with us. In case you can hear me, because earlier we had a student activist of the Kuki community, he was not able to connect. If you're able to hear me, I just want your response to this terrible news of 3 children, 3 women who are missing. The youngest among them is an 8-month-old infant. Now, of course, this has happened after the CRPF says that they killed 10 Kuki insurgents. That's what the CRPF says. I know the community has questioned that account. So there is again a lot of division over what's happened. But shouldn't we be putting those divisions aside and thinking about this infant child who is among those missing?
Barkha, you need to raise the volume from your side. Mine is at max on my phone. I can't hear you too clearly, although I could follow what you were saying. Can you hear me?
We can hear you. We can hear you. We can hear you. So go ahead. Yes.
Yeah, I heard you mentioning about 3 children.
Yes.
Now, there's no confirmation per se at this point whether that really happened or not, although we have heard one version and another. So it would be best to wait until that is absolutely clear. But to be fair, I would clearly denounce any kind of action against women or children or civilians.
Yes.
So that is our stand and our motto. If it happened in some kind of crossfire, that's inadvertent, and I don't excuse that either. But I think that statement should put very clear what we believe in. Now, I couldn't fully hear your question, I must say, in terms of apart from the 3 children aspect. If there's some way you can increase the volume and maybe repeat your question where I have not yet answered.
The connections are quite terrible all around, so we'll do the best we can.
It is terrible. I can't hear you properly.
Why don't you go ahead and give us your perspective on what is happening in Manipur right now after the 10...
Okay, I'll answer that. Let's go bit by bit.
Yes.
See, it is unfortunate what happened to the Kukizo woman on the 7th. She was shot in the leg. Then whatever else followed, her brain was taken out and put in a plastic bag. Her body was mutilated. One breast was separate from the other side, and then she was burnt, and there was no remaining except to identify that the what do you call it? The post-mortem report has also come out, and that is horrific, and that is done by someone, you know, from the side opposite us. Now you can expect, and she's a mother of 3 children, and she's 31 years old. Now, what harm has she done, this woman, a civilian, to be treated like that? Only simply because she's a Kuki zone? Now, I can understand man-to-man warfare. That is different. Now, here you're affecting a woman who is totally helpless. She's attacked in her home. She's killed. She's raped, everything else, and then burnt after being hacked to pieces. Now you can imagine the sentiment of the people, the family, the community, etc. It's at its zenith, peak. How can you control a situation like that? Now, what follows is, it appears this has happened in the vicinity of the CRPF posts. And I'm also told that in that CRPF post, as government norms, state forces are not allowed to operate on their own. So the state forces and the CRPF were together in the same camp. And allegations are that, as before in the past, the state forces in state police uniforms, you will have elements from the Arambam Tingle and the UNLFP, which has signed a deal with the government of India. So now, apart from that, the central forces man the buffer zone, and within our side of the buffer zone, we have volunteers to sort of deal with any eventuality as such. And so the CRPF and the volunteers, they're not at loggerheads, and they know who is who. And for them to be rounded up alive and then in an open area, shot by CRPF. If you arrest somebody during warfare, and there was no warfare at all, there was no exchange of fire. These volunteers were rounded up, 10 of them, and they were killed, and one managed to escape. And he said, after shooting, say, out of 10, about 6, 7 of them, 3 were still alive, and they were beaten by spades to death by the Jawans there. And there's a drone aerial recording of that. I've seen that myself. The Geneva Convention does not allow for prisoners to be treated in that way. And these were not prisoners. These are Indian citizens, volunteers. Let me just follows the children and women aspect. Yes. Now, how do you see all this in what perspective to make sense of it?
Yes.
Other than to say it is absolutely unfortunate. Let there be man-to-man war if there is.
Yeah.
Why take it out on women, our children, irrespective of which side? That is our position. And why should the central forces who are in the vicinity allow a woman to be killed on the 7th, and yet here, if they've arrested people on whatever grounds, why kill them?
I must step in now. I have a lot of questions, but because I know you're having to put your ear to the phone to hear me, I'm going to let Dr. Noni respond.
I can barely hear you.
It's okay, sir. We'll do the best. We'll do the best we can in the circumstances of the connectivity. Dr. Noni, this is a very different account. As we were saying, there are 2 completely different accounts of what has happened. I want you to now have the floor to make your comments, Dr. Noni.
First of all, I think
excuse me,
Dr. Seilen Haokip.
I'll have to leave now, please.
Dr. Seilen Haokip has been, generating these sort of narrative for quite some time.
Yeah. Barkha, I have to leave.
All right, Mr. Haokip. We'll let Dr. Noni respond. Thank you very much.
Yeah,
Dr. Noni, go ahead.
I've heard him, and I've been hearing his narrative for quite some time now. First of all, the first question is, I do condemn the incident that happened on 7th of November, in which one lady belonging to Kuki community was perhaps reportedly burnt or she was found burnt. That is something which one has to denounce without an iota of doubt. That's number one. But
Right.
it doesn't justify the abduction of another 6 women and including children. Unfortunately, Dr. Seilen did not denounce these acts. He simply shied away from getting into debate. But I expected at least him to say that whosoever has done it, they should be released safely, given the protocols, the Geneva Convention that he was talking about. I think a person coming from the valley of Manipur is clearly saying and denouncing the act that was done on 7th November, and I have no doubt about it. So we have that sensibility at least to say that no violence should actually use women and children as a tool for enhancing
How do you
violence.
respond to his argument, Dr. Noni, briefly, and then I'll give Major Shah the last word. How do you respond to Seilen Haokip's argument that the 10 men who were killed by the CRPF and the police were volunteers who were guarding their village?
Okay, let me come to that point. That I have already raised these points in the very beginning. I
Yes.
want to reiterate by saying that what were these volunteers doing in the vicinity of the police station where the CRPF and the police people were guarding the village and the displaced person? I think we should stop these, encourage these sort of narratives to say that they are simple village volunteers. Why had they come to the vicinity of the security forces? And you can imagine the houses were burned, 2 people were found chained to death, as Medasa had said already. And in between this situation, these crime scene, 3 children, including 3 women, were abducted and held hostage.
Okay.
One last point. I think there is no doubt about the abduction because you must have seen the photograph that is released already, leaked photograph. And you can look into the eyes of the children who are carefully looking into the photographers and the militants perhaps surrounding them. They're barefooted children, they're barefooted women. I think there's no need for shying away from the reality of abduction. Whosoever has done it, it is very, very apparent that the Kuki militants have done it. The only thing is that we all have to vouch for their safe release. And I think Dr. Seilen was giving only an aspect of the narrative without even getting into a humanitarian call for releasing these hostages safely. I think let's do away with this one-sided narrative. Let's get into the possibility of people calming down people and making people talk to each other. Let's stop actually repressing diverse views and repressing micro tribes within a particular majority identity.
Okay, Major Ali Shah, I'm going to give you the last word. The fact is that there is suffering on both sides. There have been mistakes on both sides. The very nature of a strife-torn state is exactly this, that you get into competitive grief and one-sided narratives. That is precisely what a conflict zone is. I have covered and reported from many, and this is classic conflict zone where people are unable to see the pain of each other and are unable to acknowledge the mistakes of their own, right? Where do we go from here? I think we have to look ahead. We cannot keep looking back. We have to break this cycle somehow.
Right, Barkha. Yes, we cannot look back. We have to only move ahead. We have to break the cycle. But how do we break the cycle? It's very, very difficult now. When we get, I must commend you on your panel. I have seen Meitei and Kuki talking in a civilized manner. Thankfully, yes. Otherwise, they start fighting on the TV panel itself. So it's very, very difficult to get them together and for communication. Now, what we saw in Jakurdhar and Borabekra, it was very gruesome. We do not know. I mean, there is a controversy, yes, whether they were village volunteers on the Kuki side. The Manipur police have reported them as militants, and some media have reported as suspected militants because there was no confirmation until yesterday. And in Mizoram, yes, they has been reporting. They have hailed them as heroes. Well, I would like to say that, I would not say unbecoming or anything like that. I would not use any harsh word to anyone. I would say that there could be a misunderstanding, and I'm certain of the fact that no one is going to call militants heroes. That's for sure. And not that one man's militant is the other man's freedom fighter. Here, I'm talking
Yeah.
about the fact that here they would be probably thinking that no, the village volunteer, and that is why they have called them heroes. So they have called thinking that they were village volunteers, they have called them heroes. They haven't said that they were militants. That's why they're heroes.
I
Okay.
understand.
Sorry.
I understand. But the problem is, and I'm sorry, but we're out of time. The problem precisely is this, that, we should be able to rise above whatever our politics are, whatever our ideologies are, whatever our view on what should happen in Manipur is, to say that, a child going missing, a woman getting assaulted, this is not even following the rules of war. Even war has rules, and this is within India. This is not war, and even war has rules. Even war has a code that is expected to be followed. And I think that's something that was flagged, I think, by Dr. Noni in the beginning. Yes, quickly, Major Ali, quickly.
I'll tell you, having operated in the northeast part of India, I have seen it personally beforehand that in Manipur, especially, there's a lot of fighting between insurgents and the army and the Assam Rifles. They have never attacked women and children ever. There was one case of Colonel Vikram Tripathi, CEO of the Assam Rifles Commandant, about 2 years back. There was one stray case, and thereafter the PLA, the People Liberation Army, they apologized. They said, "We are sorry, we did not know the lady was traveling the same convoy where this ambush happened." So when you mentioned about code of conduct of war, I've seen it. I used to always hail that, I've seen insurgency in Jammu Kashmir. I've seen insurgency in the northeast part of India. In Jammu Kashmir, they are ruthless. They will not bother about where they'll throw a grenade in the at women and children. Wherever here, the code of conduct was strictly followed in Manipur. I am surprised. I am really disheartened. What has happened here? The ambulance and the school bus used to go without protection. It was so safe for them. For us, we were under threat. We were under danger.
Understood.
The militants were under threat by us, rather, I would say. But the code of conduct of war that you are saying right now, it's really.
Well, it points to the breakdown that we're talking about. That is the depth of the breakdown in Manipuri society. It is a breakdown in society, and that is the truth that must be addressed. That's all I can say. I can only pray that these children and these women are brought back to safety. Or that anyone suffering, their suffering in some ways should be reduced, should be contained. We leave it there to Dr. Noni, to Major Ali Shah, to Seilen Haokip, and we're sorry that Paul couldn't join. Praying for better times in Manipur. Thank you very much, all of you. Take care and see you soon. It's great to see you here. Thank you for watching our work. If you haven't subscribed yet, don't forget to click the bell icon and subscribe to Mojo Story and support independent, robust journalism.